أشكر السيد نزار. الآن للمحاضرة الثالثة راح يلقيها لنا السيد أسامة عبدو، اللي خاصة في توجه استراتيجي ضد مخاطر أمن المعلومات المتفاقمة والمتقدمة، فليتفضل.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum everyone. Good afternoon everyone, and I'm very happy to see you, and special thanks to the translator. I remember 1 year back I went to Oman and I started my presentation. 30 seconds later the guy came and said, please speak in Arabic, so I got stuck, and I managed to convince him that we have some non-Arabic speakers, so I have to continue speaking in English. So to start with, I've been working as a systems engineer for Fortinet for the past 2 years, and today I'm going to present to you the evolving threat and how to mitigate them using a Fortinet solution. So what's going on today is basically, if you look at what we face in daily life, is basically huge problems that are focusing on 4 main areas. The first problem is the accelerated threat volume, which means that today the market is expanding a lot. And because it's expanding a lot, the number of threats is evolving so much. This is a statistics that we have internally in our FortiGuard cloud. And basically, for the FortiGuard cloud is the source of updates for every Fortinet device. So we can tell in 1 minute, in one FortiGuard minute, we can see that 55,000 email spam are being intercepted. 650,000 intrusion attempts were resisted and neutralized. We can see that 24 million websites have been rated in 1 minute. We're talking about 1 minute factor. So this is a massive number of increase. Plus, I mean, this slide keeps on changing every time because the number of threats keep on increasing, obviously. The updates per week on our devices are so high, as you can see, as well as the database that we have today is a massive database. If we move forward, the second problem that we have today is the growing surface of attacks. So the growing surface of attacks, just like I said, today the computers are integrated in almost every single platform we see around us. Talking about surveillance system at your house, maybe somebody penetrates and take a control over your camera. Maybe the vehicle. When I went to Kuwait airport last time, I found some advertisement talking about the new BMW being opened and switched on using the software on the mobile. How about if this one was exploited and it was penetrated? Somebody can switch on the car and move. So we can find that IT world is integrated in almost every single platform. Looking at more details, the AC. Do we have a pointer here? No? Okay. So looking at, for example, the thermostat there also can be controlled by an IT system. Power switches. So if you're probably watching TV, somebody can get inside the power switch and switch off the TV. These are simple examples. These are insignificant impact. But the real impact is if you have this system inside a bank, for example, or inside a government sector where the impact can be massive and it can cost you money. The moonworm has been discovered last year on the Linksys routers, and this is also a big vulnerability that if somebody is accessing the Linksys router, imagine what he can do. He can access your network, he can play with your internal servers and so on. He can probably create a NAT entry in order to get to remote access some of your internal systems. There's a utility called Shodan, which basically scans the internal IPs, and it can tell you and discover which IP has got what service. ICS, integrated computer systems, like the systems that we see on the screen. All of these are systems that are integrated with computers, and they can be discovered with Shodan. NAS drivers, storage, network attached storages. I can do a scan with Shodan and I can discover your home driver. So all of these are problems that need to be prevented, first of all. Then if not, at least we can detect it and we can take an action. The third problem that we have today is because we have the growing surface of attack, of course we have a lot of means to get into systems. And these means are like the social media, the WhatsApp application. How many people have received attacks on WhatsApp? Like, visit this link, can you help me? I need money, I need so and so. So these problems evolve because of the large surface of attacks first, and then secondly is the number of ways you can get into these problems. So what we used to promote a couple of years ago, and this is what the market used to promote, is the advanced persistent threat. The advanced persistent threats are targeted usually from one country to another, maybe targeting financial resources of that country, maybe attacking military resources, discovering what this country has, and so on. But the pattern, I don't know what's wrong with the screen, but never mind. The pattern today has changed, and the term ATA, Advanced Targeted Attacks, has been adopted and used by Gartner for the past 1 year. So what's the difference between APT and ATA, Advanced Persistent Threat and Advanced Targeted Threat? Advanced Targeted Threat is nothing but an APT specifically made for an organization or specifically made for a target. Moving forward, the structure of an ATA is basically starts with disguise. Disguise is basically meaning pretending that there's nothing wrong, but there's actually something wrong. So it's more like trying to get into the network using backdoors, using things that look to be legal, but they are illegal, okay? Cracks, okay? So like we say in Arabic, tamwih, and you are deceiving the victim and getting inside the network. Now, our job is to prevent that access, illegal access, to start with. But let's say if it happens, what we can do, at least if somebody is inside the network, we can at least minimize the survivability of this access. So we can minimize how long this attacker is inside my network. A lot of entities today are notified by external resources that your network is actually hacked or penetrated. A lot of companies today, they don't know that they are hacked. So if the company does not or is not able to tell that this person or this attacker is inside the network, then obviously the impact will happen, and there will be a severe damage, which can cause a lot of financial issues. So to start with, the anatomy of an attack. The attack basically requires some form of delivery. In order to get inside the network, it has to be, there has to be some form of delivering this attack. So usually things like phishing emails, maybe an exploit installed on a USB drive, somebody's plugging it inside his PC. Eventually, regardless of the way the exploit is delivered, it will be delivered eventually as an exploit. And it will be a form of a Trojan or a virus or a worm or something like that, okay? So the moment this virus or this executable or this exploit is executed, you will have something more or less like a generic threat or a bot or even a zero-day threat. So the attack, we can give an analogy for an attack. It's more or less like a product manufacturing, okay? You require some form of planning, detailed planning, some form of defining targets, maybe some testing. And these sometimes do not even rely on one person. It can be a team of guys who are working in order to hack a site or hack a network. But if we pick 3 areas here, which are very common when people hack networks. Social engineering. Problem with people is they always try to help. If you get a call from help desk and they say that we are fixing issues on computers in our organization and I need to fix your issue remotely, so can I have a remote access? You say, yes, of course. So you say, what's your username? this. What's your password? It's this. That's it. That's what I need. Username and password. I can get into the network. So social engineering can be something severe, especially if the team is not educated in a proper way. I do remember I met one of our customers, and he was saying that I want this firewall, I want this throughput, I want this protection, I want this license, and so on. And then when I asked him a simple question, I said, do your employees, when they leave the organization, lock their machines? He said, no, they keep it open. So what's the value? You can have the strongest device, you can have the highest and most secure device in the network, but eventually you have a weak link into your network. So the initial intrusion takes place more or less like what we call the zero-day exploit, especially if it's unknown file. If it's unknown exploit, we call it zero-day because it has not been discovered before. And eventually, the botnet, when it resides on the machine, what it does is it exfiltrates the data, which means it gets the data outside the storage of this data. So the ultimate goal for a hacker, of course, is to breach the data and get the information. Of course, the attack, most of the attacks, they take place in a matter of one day or maybe even in few minutes. However, in some cases, we saw attacks that can take 2 years or even more than 2 years. Somebody's injecting a Trojan inside the network, and it keeps on taking the data out, fetching the data out of the network. And it has been a case that I got to know recently, that there was a company, which is not anymore there, where they actually used to get the data from the internal resources for too long, around something like 10 years. Okay, getting data, maybe some roadmaps, some financial records, some strategic plan within the company. But eventually, this is what happens if the team is not educated very well. So you can have, as I said earlier, you can have the strongest devices in the network, but the human factor or the human error, the people not being aware of what's happening on the network can be fooled easily, and the problem that the exploit can take place and the penetration and breach will happen. What you see in this graph is basically a sample of the exploits that were taken in June 2014. And what you see in green is the identified malware per day, whereas the red ones are the unidentified threats. Of course, when we say identified threats, it means your existing firewall can look at it and can protect you against them. So if we take a look at, for example, day number 20, you'll find about 300,000 of the malware were actually identified, and because they are identified, they were blocked and stopped. However, we have a huge number of threats which were not identified, and this is about like 100,000 exploits. So what do we do with these unknown exploits? We actually forward them to a Sandbox engine for further analysis. The motivation behind the attacks is basically multiple things, mainly crimes. People like money. Okay, they want to transfer money somehow. They want to steal information. It has been noticed also hacktivism has been a factor. Hacktivism means people hacking for political reasons. Okay, and there were like a few cases where cyber espionage were actually found, but it's there, but it's a small portion. In the past year, we found that there are many vulnerabilities discovered. As I said earlier, the moonworm on the Linksys routers has been discovered. Also, the famous OpenSSL, the Heartbleed vulnerability, was also discovered in April. So it's probably everybody knows about the Heartbleed because it has impacted a lot of devices because it uses the OpenSSL version. But what you see here is not really everything that was discovered in 2014. There are actually much more than this. These are only samples of what has been discovered. This is a good example, talking about eBay vulnerability. eBay faced a problem, I think, last year, and basically, they requested everybody to change their password. How many people here have eBay account? Good. We have a good amount of people. So when was the last time you changed your password? Have you ever changed your password? No? Yeah? So this is the problem. We, as people, I mean, I personally have an eBay account and I haven't changed my password, which is a bit shame, but never mind. The problem with people is they tend to be lazy and not changing their password frequently. And that's why, in order to meet the ISO for security, you're required to have at least 3 months or 6 months frequent change of your password. So the problem here is when eBay requested their customers to change the password, this request has not impacted only the infected users, but also impacted the non-infected users. Because it's when you want to give a memo for everyone to apply something on the network, you really expect that everyone would obey and will do it. So what this means that 145 million user accounts were compromised. However, the request, the number of passwords that were changed per year was actually almost quarter of a million passwords, assuming that on average it takes 2 minutes to change a password. So that means that there are about 551 people per year are wasting their time just changing passwords. So the way to tackle or to address the ATAs, advanced targeted attacks, is with Fortinet solution what we call advanced threat protection, which is a complete life cycle of the attack, and the way we handle it is basically, you can see this, what we saw earlier, the structure of the exploit, how people are penetrating a network. So there's basically no silver bullet that can fix everything. There's no single device that can fix everything for you. You really need to have a complete suite that takes a look at the network traffic and also mitigate as well as detect what's happening on the network. So our focus is 3 main areas. First of all, prevent. The prevention step can be done using some form of firewall, two-factor authentication, maybe email security gateway. So these devices can prevent majority of the traffic, majority of attacks. Okay. Next is if you happen to have a hole into the network and the hacker managed to get in, you need to minimize the time that he's spending on your network by detecting what's happening. So you will really need to discover the threat within the network, and you need to act upon that by trying to mitigate the problem. So the response that you get is part of the life cycle of the attack. So again, for step 1, prevent, we use different methods. We use the stateful firewall, we use two-factor authentication, intrusion prevention, the IPS, application control, web filter, email filter, as well as antivirus. Now, these features are all integrated within a single platform, which is the FortiGate. Okay? But there's a concern about the antivirus. People tend to say antivirus is already dead, and people tend to stay away from antivirus because they believe that it's not anymore valid, because threats keep on evolving, and the antivirus cannot handle majority of the traffic. So they stop marketing for antivirus because they believe in day zero attacks. The problem with this, we don't believe in this, by the way. The problem with this is day zero attacks are actually mitigated using the ATP solution, the Advanced Threat Protection. However, we believe, based on the statistics, that the CVEs discovered last year were less than 10% of what has been discovered over the past decade. Because in the past 10 years, 90% of the attacks were actually repeating this year. So what you will find is that the number of attacks that happened in 2014 are old attacks. People start marketing for day zero, zero day, and so on, but they really ignore the 10 years old attack, which is a crucial part. That's why in this you find 2014. In 2014, about 10% only of the vulnerabilities were new. So what we do is we say, okay, the antivirus engine is required to protect you against these 90% of the attacks. The leftover, which is the 10%, the newly discovered or the unknown attacks, will be forwarded to the Sandbox solution for further analysis and further inspection. The other problem is that a lot of people are still using Windows XP and some outdated operating systems, especially for banking sectors. They tend not to change their operating systems very often. As you probably know, that Windows XP is already end of life and end of sale, so people will never be able to update the out-of-date operating systems. And that's why they are more exposed to vulnerabilities, and that's why you will need to forward these unknown files to a Sandbox solution. So the second step is the detection. So we can do the detection using the sandboxing. However, sandboxing is not everything. Actually, there are some attackers who are able to tell whether they have sent the exploit to a real machine or to a sandbox. So it's not the 100% proof against all the hacks and against all the exploits. Mitigation. So there are multiple utilities that can be used to monitor the network, especially if you are able to detect the threats. So you can forward logs to a central location. You can integrate the solution with threat intelligence and threat prevention updates. So our model which we focus on is a set of 3 phases. First phase is to prevent majority of the problems on the firewalls, on the email security appliances. Then we, whatever we cannot identify because of the signatures being day zero, okay, we can forward it to the Sandbox solution, which can detect further, or let's say it takes the file into further analysis into the sandboxing engine. And when the Sandbox is able to tell this is a good file and this is a bad file, it can mitigate it by telling the firewall that this is a bad file, so please mitigate it. So the devices inside your network can do majority of the blocking. Whatever is not detected can be forwarded to the Threat Research and Discovery Center, and based on that, you can update the devices within your network. So talking about our products, today we have the FortiGate, the FortiWeb, and FortiMail. FortiGate, as you probably know, majority of people here, I think they dealt with FortiGate before. So it's a UTM appliance which can identify majority of the problems. It can be installed inline, so it can block exploits using the antivirus engine. It can check for IPS vulnerabilities. It can also do application control, anti-spam filter, URL filtering, and so on. So whatever is not known by the FortiGate can be always integrated with the Sandbox appliance. The same story applies with FortiMail. FortiMail is a good example. FortiMail, if I send an email that contains malicious patterns, let's say it's a phishing email or something like that, or it's probably a PDF that contains a link that if you click on it, it's an exploit, then what we can do with this email is we can forward it to the Sandbox. We don't need to, emails are not really time critical. I mean, if I send you an email, I don't expect that you will respond in few seconds. It's not like firewall that when you require high performance. Email is not time critical, but it's critical in terms of security. So you need to make sure that when you receive emails are cleaned and you don't have any infected information inside the email. So what we can do with FortiMail is we can hold the email for a few minutes and we can forward it to the Sandbox in the background. The Sandbox can do the analysis, everything, and check it. And upon approval, it can send it back to the FortiMail saying that this email is good, so please go ahead and forward it to the mail server. Otherwise, it can drop it. The FortiWeb is a web application firewall. The same story when you do file uploads. Let's say somebody is you are publishing your site, and you have a tab where it says recruitment. So you click on that, and it says upload your CV. I can upload my CV, but the problem is I can also upload a virus. If I upload a virus, it's going to impact the web server. So what we do with FortiWeb is we can check that virus using the built-in antivirus engine. But let's say if the antivirus engine is not updated, what's going to happen? It's a problem. We can forward it to the Sandbox appliance. Once we forward it to the Sandbox appliance, the Sandbox can tell the FortiWeb this is a good file and this is a bad file, and therefore we can allow or disallow. So today, the integration with FortiSandbox we have with FortiGate, with FortiWeb, FortiMail, as well as with FortiClient. FortiClient is a freeware. It's a free software that you can install on your machine, and it can also be integrated with FortiSandbox for further analysis. So if you have FortiClient and you receive a bad file, or let's say an unknown file, you can always put it on hold until you make sure it's a clean file by the Sandbox. One box. The Sandbox is a one box that is deployed on the network and can be integrated with all of these various technologies. So what do we do with Dave? Dave is the guy who was in the wrestling ring. I think I put it on the wrong place. So what do we do with Dave? Dave is basically receiving a lot of emails, like what we call the social engineering. So this is a good example of an email that is malicious and it contains false information. If you click and feed in information, it's not something good. There's another example. It shows you it's a government entity. So government means more severe. I mean, you will have to respond somehow. So if you read it carefully, and if you start contacting, maybe calling a phone number is more secure than sending an email. So you need to make sure that you're not fooled by these emails in order to avoid any potential penetration. User awareness. It's good to hold training sessions for your users and tell them that they should not disclose any personal information to anybody. I believe it happened in Kuwait when you call banks. Never disclose your banking information to anyone. So as technology evolves, also hackers evolve. Because today you probably have the best thing in the market in terms of security, but the hackers will never stop. They will keep on looking on how can we get into the network and how can we hack the networks. A good example of this is more like a football game where you have the attacker and the defender. The attacker knows exactly what he wanted to do, what he wants to do. So he can shoot the ball, he can pass it to some other player, and the other player can shoot the ball, and so on. So, but the defender is not sure what's going to happen. So the defender will have to anticipate somehow that this is what the attacker is going to do. So in order to prevent the ball from getting inside the pole, what you need to do is you most probably need to understand the mentality of the attacker in order to know how he thinks and how would he react. And therefore you can prevent the attack easily. So in summary, so technology is one part of the solution. It's not everything. Technology is a crucial part of the security on the network, but also training your audience or training your staff is something essential as well. Okay, I cannot read this. Remember that your network extends beyond you, okay? Remote employees, third parties, suppliers, and contractors, all of these can be a source of a threat on the network. Never assume that you are fully protected. Always have this fear inside. I personally have this fear. When I have a NAS storage at my home, if I don't use it for a long time, I just switch it off. The best security is the physical layer security. Switch it off. Thank you very much for your time.
شكرا أسامة.